Let me start with this truth. If you're still punishing yourself for something that happened years ago, you're not healing. You're serving a life sentence for a crime you've already paid for. Now let me speak directly to the part of you that still feels tight in the chest, the part that replays the moment. The choice, the words you wish you could take back. Guilt has a way of whispering, if you suffer long enough, maybe you'll be forgiven. But here's the brutal truth. Guilt doesn't redeem you. It cages you. Most people think they haven't forgiven themselves because what they did was too big. But that's not it. They haven't forgiven themselves because forgiving would mean admitting I was human. And somewhere along the way, you decided being human was unacceptable. So you carry the shame quietly. Religiously, you revisit the moment like it's a courtroom, and you're both the judge and the accused. No defense, no mercy. And let me say this clearly, if guilt actually made us better people, you'd be free by now. What you're feeling isn't accountability anymore. It's self-abandonment. You're not holding yourself to values, you're holding yourself hostage. Self-forgiveness isn't saying it didn't matter. It's saying it mattered, and I choose to grow instead of bleed. Before we go any further, I need you to hear this. You are not the worst thing you've ever done. And your guilt is not proof of your goodness. Your willingness to face it is. That's where real healing begins. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. Guilt feels safer than forgiveness. Because guilt says, I'm still paying. Forgiveness says, I'm done punishing myself. And for many of us, that feels wrong. We were taught, quietly, relentlessly, that suffering equals responsibility, that if we hurt long enough, we're proving we care. So when the pain starts to fade, panic sets in. Who am I if I stop hurting? What does that say about what I did? Here's the truth. Guilt gives you a false sense of control. As long as you're ashamed, you believe you're preventing it from happening again. But shame doesn't teach, it silences. And there's another layer we don't talk about enough. Self-forgiveness threatens the story you tell about yourself. If you've built your identity around being the one who messed up, healing would require you to step into someone new. And new feels terrifying. So instead, you replay the memory, you rewrite it in your head, you imagine better versions of yourself. And every time you fall short, that loop isn't reflection. It's self-harm dressed up as accountability. Forgiveness demands courage because it removes the shield of self-hatred. And without that shield, you have to face grief. Grief for who you were. Grief for who you couldn't be at that moment. Let me be clear. Refusing to forgive yourself doesn't make you moral. It makes you stuck. Real accountability isn't about endless regret. It's about integration, taking the lesson, and letting it change you. You don't heal by staying in the wound. You heal by walking forward with the scar. Let me say this plainly, because someone needs to hear it without softness. Shame is not a moral compass. It doesn't guide you. It blinds you. We confuse shame with integrity. We think if I feel bad enough, I must be a good person. But feeling bad doesn't make you better. Learning does. Shame tells you I am bad. Guilt says I did something bad. And that difference matters more than we admit. When you collapse your behavior into your identity, growth stops. Because if you are the problem, there's no room for repair. There's only hiding, shrinking, and self-erasure. Here's what shame actually does. It keeps you small so you don't risk hurting anyone again. But it also keeps you disconnected from others and from yourself. And disconnection is the breeding ground of every behavior we regret, not connection, not love, not accountability. If shame truly made us kinder, more responsible, more courageous, we'd see it working by now. Instead, we see people numbing, people lashing out, people disappearing inside themselves. You don't need more shame to become better. You need clarity. You need context. You need compassion paired with responsibility. And let me be very clear here. Compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It's staying present long enough to understand why it happened, what you needed, what you didn't have, what broke open inside you. Self-forgiveness begins the moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me, and start asking, What happened to me? And what can I learn? That question doesn't excuse the behavior. It transforms it into wisdom. And wisdom, not shame, is what keeps us from repeating the past. Let me say this slowly, because it goes against everything most of us were taught. You can take responsibility without destroying yourself. Somewhere along the way, accountability got twisted into self-violence. We decided that if we weren't ruthless with ourselves, we weren't being honest. So we punish, we withhold kindness, we deny ourselves rest, joy, and peace. But that's not responsibility. That's revenge turned inward. Real accountability is grounded. It's sober. It's strong enough to say, I did this. It mattered. And I am willing to repair. Notice what's missing there. There's no self-hatred, no character assassination, no endless replay. Because when you destroy yourself, you actually avoid the work. Shame collapses you. Responsibility asks you to stand. And standing is harder. Owning your actions means staying present with the discomfort without turning it into a story about your worth. It means separating the facts of what happened from the lies shame whispers afterward. Here's a truth that's uncomfortable, but freeing. You can be accountable and still deserve grace. Those two things are not opposites. In fact, grace is what makes accountability sustainable. Without it, you burn out, you spiral, you disappear. Ask yourself this: has beating yourself up made you more trustworthy, more loving, more whole, or has it just made you exhausted and afraid to try again? Self-forgiveness is not erasing the past. It's integrating it, allowing it to inform your values instead of defining your identity. You don't grow by dragging yourself through the fire. You grow by learning how to walk through it and come out changed. Let's talk about the story. Because every ounce of guilt you're carrying is wrapped around a sentence you repeat in your head. If I were better, this wouldn't have happened. I should have known. I ruined everything. And here's the thing most people never realize: you're not suffering because of what happened. You're suffering because of the meaning you assign to it. Our brains crave simple stories. So instead of sitting with complexity, we reach for certainty and blame ourselves entirely. It feels cleaner. It feels decisive. But it's rarely true. You judge your past self using information, maturity, and awareness you didn't have at the time. That's not honesty. That's cruelty. The truth is you made the best choice you could with the tools you had in that moment. That doesn't mean it was the right choice. It means it was a human one. And when you refuse to update the story, you trap yourself in it. You keep narrating your life from the moment you fell apart instead of the moment you learned. Let me say this clearly. You are allowed to rewrite the meaning without rewriting the facts. The fact may be, I hurt someone. The story doesn't have to be, I am a dangerous person. The fact may be, I failed. The story doesn't have to be, I am a failure. Self-forgiveness begins when you replace judgment with curiosity. When you ask, what was I trying to protect? What did I need? What did this teach me? Your past doesn't need a prosecutor. It needs a witness. And when you finally witness yourself with honesty and compassion, the story loosens its grip. Let's clear up one of the most dangerous myths about self-forgiveness. You don't have to forget to forgive. For many people, the memory itself feels like proof they don't deserve peace. If I still remember it, I must not be done paying. But memory is not a sentence. It's information. The mind doesn't store pain to torture you. It stores it to protect you. The problem starts when you confuse remembrance with self-punishment. You can remember what happened without reliving it. You can acknowledge the harm without reopening the wound. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about changing your relationship to it. Right now, that memory is holding authority. It shows up and your body tightens. Your breath shortens. You shrink. But what if the memory could become a teacher instead of a weapon? Self-forgiveness sounds like this. Yes, that happened. Yes, it hurt. And I am still worthy of love, trust, and belonging. You don't owe your suffering to anyone, not even to the past version of yourself. Growth doesn't demand perpetual pain. It demands presence. Let me say this gently but firmly. If you require yourself to hurt forever in order to honor what happened, You're confusing punishment with respect. Respect looks like learning. Respect looks like repair. Respect looks like choosing differently when the moment comes again. Your memory doesn't disqualify you from peace. It qualifies you for wisdom. Here's something we don't say enough. What hurts most after guilt isn't the mistake. It's the loss of trust in yourself. You don't just think, I did something wrong. You think, I can't trust me. And that fracture runs deep, so you stay hyper vigilant. You second guess every decision. You hold yourself back because you're afraid of becoming that version of you again. But self-trust isn't rebuilt through punishment. It's rebuilt through repair. Repair doesn't always mean apologizing to someone else. Sometimes it means changing how you show up. Sometimes it means setting boundaries you didn't have before. Sometimes it means telling the truth where you used to stay silent. Repair is action with integrity. And here's the powerful part. Every time you act in alignment with your values, you deposit trust back into yourself, not all at once. Slowly, quietly. Self-forgiveness doesn't ask, how do I erase the past? It asks, how do I live differently now? You don't heal by swearing you'll never fail again. You heal by proving to yourself that if you do, you'll face it honestly and responsibly. That's how confidence is born, not from perfection, but from reliability. You become someone you can count on. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Someone who can hold regret without drowning in it. And when you trust yourself again, guilt loosens its grip because you no longer need it to keep you in line. Let's be honest about compassion because it's been deeply misunderstood. Compassion is not indulgence. It's not excuses. And it's definitely not avoidance. Compassion is disciplined courage. Self-compassion means you're willing to stay present with your pain without turning it into a weapon against yourself. It means you can look at what you did and still say, I am worthy of care. And that's hard because cruelty is familiar. Kindness requires strength. When you practice compassion, you interrupt the cycle of shame that says, I must suffer to stay accountable. You replace it with something far more effective, responsibility grounded in dignity. Here's what real self-compassion sounds like. This hurts. I regret it. And I am committed to learning instead of collapsing. Compassion doesn't remove consequences. It removes contempt. And contempt is what keeps us stuck. You don't change because you hate yourself enough. You change because you care enough. Think about the people who helped you grow the most. They didn't shame you into becoming better. They believed you could be better and held you to it. That's the relationship you're being asked to build with yourself. When you meet your guilt with compassion, something shifts. You stop running. You stop hiding. You stop rehearsing punishment. And in that space, growth finally has room to breathe. Here's a truth that most of us resist with everything in our being. You cannot undo the past. And yet, every day we act as if we can. We rewind conversations. We replay decisions. We imagine every what if and hold ourselves hostage to it. The illusion that you could have controlled everything is the last chain keeping you in guilt. You punish yourself because you believe that if you suffer enough, the past will bend to your will. But it won't. It never has. It never will. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're excusing the hurt. It means you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. You accept that some things were beyond your capacity, beyond your awareness, beyond your maturity, beyond your tools at the time. And here's the paradox: freedom lives in surrender, not avoidance, not denial, not minimization. Surrender, acknowledging reality without judgment. When you release the illusion of control, something astonishing happens. You reclaim energy, you reclaim presence, you reclaim yourself. Self-forgiveness is less about fixing what's broken and more about stopping the self-imposed violence. It's the moment you realize the past is done and you are not. You are still here, still learning, still capable of love, courage, and trust. Guilt loses its grip when you stop feeding it with fantasies of, if only I could change it. And that's when real peace begins. Now it's time to say it out loud. You are allowed to forgive yourself. Not someday. Not when the world approves. not when every mistake has a perfect resolution right now, today. This moment, because waiting for external validation only keeps you trapped. You've spent years carrying guilt like it was a backpack full of stones. And the weight wasn't punishment. It was a lie you told yourself about who you are. Forgiveness is not a reward. It's not a luxury. It's a lifeline. It's the acknowledgement that your past actions do not define your worth. Your capacity to love, to try again, to rise after failure, that defines you. So release the relentless self-judgment. Step out of the courtroom you've been running in your mind for decades. You are not guilty of being human. Look at yourself with the same fierce compassion you've given to others. Repair where you can. Learn where you must. And let the rest go. The freedom you're searching for is not somewhere out there. It's in your own hands. It's in your willingness to say, I did the best I could. I am still learning, and I am enough. This is not forgetting. This is not excusing. This is the radical, liberating truth. You are capable of living fully, even with your past. Forgiveness is a gift. The only question is, will you give it to yourself? Because until you do, the past isn't over. You're just carrying it. And now you can finally set it down